Previously on Chaos Head Noah. Saliva trickled down from the corners of her mouth, accompanied by moans akin to those of a beast's. If anyone were to hear them, they would never have been able to guess that they would be coming from a girl as young as her. She was being tortured. Slow, methodical torture. One that made very, very little sound. The method only involved one single thing. Not even an action. A drop of water falling from above onto her forehead every 5 seconds on the exact same spot.
今日はお見舞いに来たんすよ。
そうは思えないわ。目的は？
鋭いっすね。
The detective flinched very overtly, his reaction perhaps bordering on theatrical.
まあ、ちょっと綾瀬ちゃんに聞きたいことがあって。あ、これ、よかったら食べてほしいっす。
The detective smiled instantly, presented the basket he had brought with him, then placed it at Ayase's feet without waiting for approval.
うまいっすよ。あと、高かった。
いらない。
まあそう言わずせっかく買ってきたんで、後でお母さんが来た時にでも切ってもらって。しまった。綾瀬ちゃんはもう何年も両親に会ってないんだったっすね。
ニュージェネのことを歌ったものなんかじゃないわ、あの詩は。グラジオール記黙示録詩編のインスピレーションを受けて作った第3章102節よ。世界に邪神王グラジオールが現れようとしている。復活を阻止するにはグラジオールが流した黒い血によって作られた7つの杭が必要。杭は剣へと形を変え、神罰を乗り越えた7人の黒騎士の手に渡る。目には目を、歯には歯を。邪神を背負いし人間だけが邪神王を滅ぼせるの。
なんか映画みたいっすね。
Very interesting verse, not gonna lie. I asked him about God. He told me God is real. I think he's real too. My mom said God is always watching, and he'll make you go to hell if you do bad things. So I can absolutely never do bad things. I have to be nice to my little sister too. Mom told me God doesn't watch you do bad things, but that's a scary man. But it's a scary man instead. The scary man is the whose eyes are those eyes monster. He makes you go to hell if he sees you. God's eyes, and whose eyes are those eyes, are in the sky, the ceiling, the walls, and there's a ton of them in my school, and they're watching me no matter what. So I think I have to do a lot of good things, like studying and other stuff because of that. It's embarrassing though, because they watch me even when I do things like go to the toilet or take a bath. Also, ever since I was little, I could close my eyes in dreams sometimes, even though I wasn't sleeping. It was like the inside of my head was like a video game or a manga. But when I do that, the whose eyes are those eyes monster comes out, so I don't want to do that. I asked my mom, and she told me not to do it. But while I'm writing this essay, I asked some older me in my dreams to tell me more about the time machine, but he said I knew everything. He wouldn't tell me more stuff because I'm just a kid. So from now on, I want to do lots of good things so I can beat whose eyes are those eyes. The end. That's the same formula. This formula. It was the exact same one Shogun had posted out of nowhere, back when he'd first come in contact with me in the chat room. Whose eyes are those eyes? And IR2. LR2, excuse me. No, IR2. Two key things that come from this essay I'd written many years ago. Things that even I myself had forgotten. And if Shogun knew them, that would mean he'd been reading my mind after all.
杭にあった指紋から容疑者についてはほぼ固まってんだ。まだマスコミにも公表してねえけどな。ちなみにそれ、諏訪のお手柄だったりする。
Yeah, that's the problem. Sue is the one handling the evidence.
諏訪ちゃんは頑張ってるっていうのに、バンちゃんはよくここでのんびりしていられるわね。
実はあれ、捜査本部から外されたんだわ。
はあ？
本来の捜査サボって G レートのこととか調べてんの上司にバレちゃってな。
This was the reason why his subordinate, Suwa, had been the one to inform him of the 7th incident. There had been no reason for anyone else to call an investigator that was no longer working the case.
あんたね、もっとうまく立ち回りなさいよ。まあバンちゃんに G レートのことを教えた私にも責任はあるけど。
気にすんなって。それに G レートの件は個人的にも気になってたんだ。まあ西条にしても貼り付け以外の事件じゃまだ捜査線上にいる。もしかするとユアちゃんの推理が正しいかもしれん。
ニュージェネは同一犯による連続殺人事件じゃないって警察は考えてるの？
まだ何度も。ただついさっき第7の事件が起きたようだしな。個人的には犯人は複数いると思ってる。とにかく一体どんな種があるのかわかんねえが、そんな手品みてえな真似ができる連中がこの渋谷には何人かいるらしい。まあそれと岸本綾瀬も青井瀬奈も西条匠と接触したことは確認済みだ。これが偶然とは思えねえわけよ。
西条くん、
あの少年の周囲ではどうも現実離れしたことばかりが起きてるような気がする。
Understatement. As Bon said that, his words from the call before reappeared in his mind.
怪獣か魔法使いで済ませられるならよっぽどいいけどな。
She didn't seem to have noticed me. Her back was turned to me, and she was mumbling something while deeply absorbed in whatever she was working on. In her hand was a clipboard. She was writing something on the form stuck to it.
信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ、信仰の救いあれ。
Nurse lady, I got a question. Are you, by any chance, a follower of those religious cults I've been hearing about on and off that have recently formed in Shibuya? And it's the divine light, you say. Same the divine light here that the Nozomi guys had mentioned before.
これって。
I had seen it before. I had already seen this shittily drawn sketch somewhere before. But where? Where had I seen it? My head ached. A stabbing pain pierced through it. The hairs on the nape of my neck stood on end. Don't look at me. I picked up the clipboard. Countless medical forms were clipped onto it. I went to flip up the page. The second piece of paper had the same shitty drawing. I flipped to the next page. The third was also the same. And the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. Each and every one of them had the same drawing scribbled on it. Again and again and again. This drawing was the crucifixion. And so it continues. Greetings, my name's Neo2nd, and welcome back to my Let's Play of Chaos Head Noah. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to start the new year playing as the world's unluckiest otaku freak for the next hour and a half or so. And I, for one, am wondering what your next big plan is, Takumi. Now that you know that the hospital seems to be a bit on the compromised side as far as the crazy little Shogun conspiracy seems to be concerned. I mean, that little scene with our dear old nurse friend here certainly would make me very cautious about setting foot in that place ever again, unless absolutely necessary. That and that big black void we came across. Evening fell on the roof of an old building in Shinshen, the building atop which Nishijo Takumi's container house stood, still as death. It's the Death House! It was Aoi Seina's second time visiting it. The first time had been a few days prior. Following her encounter with Kozue and Takumi in Center Guy, she had gone on to tell the boy in secret. Sneaky. I don't approve. Through this, the location was set in stone in her mind. You gonna be snooping through my Dojin collection? Oh, you're gonna steal something from me, huh? You gonna steal my PC?
それならどうしてついてきた?
Seina regarded Kozue in a cold manner, refusing to even turn around to view her sagging shoulders, nor her long face. How dare you? Her face isn't long. Seina had come here to infiltrate Takumi's room. Nishijo Takumi is not normal. That was the conclusion she had come to after speaking to him many times. There was no doubt in her mind that he was distinctly different to normal gigolomaniacs, like Kozue and herself. Did he possess delusional abilities so abnormal it proved terrifying? Or could he perhaps be receiving some form of artificial support? Regardless of which it might be, the uncertain nature of Takumi greatly bothered Seina. As of the current moment, she was searching for a man known as Hatano. There was a very real possibility that Nishijo Takumi had some kind of connection to him. She had no conclusive evidence of this. But through investigating even the most lightly suspicious things with her own eyes, the possibilities would be torn down one by one. And with such methodology, she would find her target with absolute certainty. That was Seina's creed. That's a creed I can get behind. The door had a padlock attached to it. With a slight scoff, she swung down her D-sword that she had preemptively real-booted. Breaking and entering! The padlock was effortlessly smashed to pieces. He'll be many things, but mad will be pretty far in the back of his mind. He'd be more like scared shitless. Seina had already confirmed that Takumi had been heading from school toward the station of two of his friends. However, even if he were to find out, it would make no difference to her. When it came to attaining her goal, Sena had no qualms of others coming to detest her, or even being reported to the police. Wouldn't being reported to the police kind of make achieving your goals a bit of a hassle? Especially if you're locked up in a cell? She opened the door and stepped into the room. Behold, my den of sin! Make yourself at home. Sena could only grimace at the disastrous cesspool of a room. The endless piles of trash forced a groan from her mouth. Talk to me! The homicidal maniac thinks you're yucky. Got any thoughts?
なんで楽しそうなんだ小杖。
I'm sure she'll let something slip later on, probably. Ghostby doesn't really strike me as someone who, at least so far anyway, who's not terribly good at keeping secrets.
靴は脱いだ方がいいのかな?
You want to take your shoes off in this place? I don't know. You might catch some kind of weird toe fungus if you do. With a sigh, Sena ventured deeper into the room, shoes still adorning her feet. Smart girl.
お人形さんいっぱいなのら。うぷー。たくみさんって変態さんだったんだ。すごいな。
I'm impressed that you're impressed by this. Paying no heed to Kozue, who seemed oddly impressed, Sena stood before the PC. She turned the power on without hesitation and scoured the desk with her eyes as she waited. Furrowing her brow, she picked up a sheet of paper that had been left on the desk. An essay. Oh, is it that essay? Hmm?
その目、誰の目だ?
Kozue had peeked at the essay from behind Sena's back, and she was now jumping up and down in excitement.
やっぱり、たくみちゃんがその目誰の目の人だったのら。コズピーはパンパカパーンだったぽーん。
I'd give you a sticker, but unfortunately, I'm not that lame. In vast contrast to Kozue, Sena skimmed the essay with disinterest, then casually flipped it over. The very next instant, her eyes widened in shock. You recognize the thing in there?
これ
Something was drawn there. It was...
うんぴー、人がいっぱいだね。これロボットさん ?IR2 だって。セナさん
The sound of grating teeth escaped from Sena's lips. Her expression was far more grim than usual, and the hand holding the essay trembled with anger.
そうか西条が IR2 を生み出した張本人か
And what is IR2 exactly? Her voice forcefully stifled. She crushed the sheet of paper in her fist. I left the nurse's station and stumbled around the hospital, my mind buried in fog. I was doing everything in my power to avoid thinking about what I'd just seen. Before I knew it, I found myself standing at the landing of the staircase, with Misumi-kun gazing outside by the window.
どうしたタク汗びっしょりじゃねえか 顔色も悪いし。あ、顔色悪いのはいつもか。もしかして走って探してたのか？そりゃバテもするぜ。無茶するね、お前って。
I wiped my sweat away and tried desperately to feign composure.
リミと岸本、見つけたぜ。
Oh, really now? And where were they? Despite what he'd said, I couldn't see either of them. Then, for some odd reason, he pointed outside the window.
あそこだ。
Once I caught my breath, I approached the window. I could see the outpatient ward from it. The outpatient and hospital wards were separate buildings, accessible through a corridor connecting them. They weren't all that far apart, though. The hospital ward had many floors, and the landing I was on looked slightly down on the roof of the outpatient ward. On that roof, shrubbery sporting red flowers formed a makeshift garden, and it seemed to be a place where patients went to relax. In the center of the garden, I could see Rimi and Ayase. Ayase was wearing pajamas, and she was discussing something with Rimi. Those two shouldn't know each other, right? Well, initially I didn't think so, but it looks like they might already do.
なんか妙にシリアスに見えねえか。
It almost looked like they were glaring at each other. Suddenly, Ayase closed in on Rimi and slapped her right across the cheek. Well, clearly whatever they're discussing, it is indeed tense. Emotions running hot. Hands flying across faces. Even from where I was standing, I could tell that she hadn't held back one bit. Ayase then walked away from Rimi. She was heading in the direction of the passageway, so she was probably going back to her hospital room.
今ビンタしたよな。
Yep, she got bitch slapped. I nodded. Even after being left behind, Rimi didn't move an inch. She simply stood there.
あの二人ってトラブル抱えてんのか？
Well, clearly, yeah. If there was, I knew nothing about it. Is it me? Are they talking about dear old me? I readily went along with Misumi-kun's proposal to pretend like we'd never seen what we'd seen. We then decided to leave Rimi to her own devices and return to Ayase's room. Just what I was going to suggest. The state of my body had mostly recovered by now, and God's gaze had vanished. It was to the point where it felt like that horrible sickness I've been feeling had never even been there in the first place. Misumi-kun let out a sound from in front of me. I looked up in response, only to see Ayase walking over to us. Her head hung slightly limp, and her gaze pointed downward. Her steps were slow and lacked energy. Her face was very pale, and her expression was, to no surprise, intensely somber. We had somehow managed to bump into Ayase right in front of her hospital room.
よ、岸本さん。
Misumi-kun gave the most eloquent greeting possible for him, to which Ayase raised her head in surprise. She looked at me, and then, despite seeming like she was on the brink of tears, she smiled at me. Why had she done that? They were talking about me, weren't they? Could be wrong, but I kinda doubt it. Had she heard about the uproar that happened in front of O-Front? About all the shameful things I'd done? Or was she just being friendly? Why don't you go ask her? The former would be beyond depressing.
俺たち君のお見舞いに来たんだよね。つうか岸本さん、パジャマ姿も可愛いじゃん。
His passive pickup artist had activated in barely any time at all. Talking about rushing the objective.
入って。
Although Iyase had treated Misumi-kun pretty coldly before, she didn't do that this time. Instead, Iyase opened her door and invited us in. She didn't show a single hint of having slapped Rimi just a few minutes ago. Was she hiding it well? Or had she already gotten over it in such a short time? I bet the former. As per usual, I had no idea what Iyase was thinking.
やっぱ見舞いに来たのは正解だったぜ。今日は好感触だ。
Misumi-kun gave a small fist pump while Iyase wasn't looking, then excitedly entered the room. I reluctantly followed after him. In all honesty, I wanted to head home with Rimi ASAP. But I didn't have the courage to say anything to her. I didn't know the reason why, but being so fiercely slapped like that must have made her pretty depressed. And I knew I didn't have the words to encourage her. At least you know your limits. You wimp. Iyase sat down on the bed, and Misumi-kun very casually sat beside her. Talk about daring, I'll say. I couldn't help but be taken aback by Misumi-kun's mode of attack. Iyase gave Misumi-kun a single glance before fixing her gaze upon me. Being stared at so blatantly put me at a loss for how exactly I was supposed to respond. I didn't know what kind of expression to make, so I just ended up looking down at the floor.
怪我どう？もうだいぶ良くなってるみたいだけど。なんか必要なものあるなら遠慮なく言ってよ。俺がすぐ買ってきてやるぜ。
He focused intently on Iyase's hand. If I had to guess, he was scheming on how best to grab it. That refined, slender hand. Grab it at your own peril, buddy. Should I just go?
あ、小説とか読む？俺さ、グラジオール記黙示録詩編ってのが好きなんだけど。岸本さん、知ってる
？You might want to show some tact when it comes to mentioning that particular bit of literature. It probably won't go well for you if you don't.
匠。
Leaving Misumi-kun's question unanswered, Iyase called my name. Well, that was actually pretty tame.
君はグラジオールの7騎士の一人よ。
Well, I can't say I'm surprised at that particular revelation.
え？
Right into the schizo shit, huh? Even the mayhem surrounding her attempted suicide hadn't been enough to change her at her core.
やっぱり導きだったんだわ。君と私が出会ったのは。
Quietly, dispassionately, Iyase narrated about what I could only call a totally chuny storyline.
君の邪神はとても強大。だからこそ言うことなしなのよ。黒騎士としての素質は。君が今経験している苦しみはすべて神罰。大いなる意志による試練なの。それを乗り越えた時に理想度は召喚されるわ。君の手に必ず。そして現れるのよ。邪神の黒き大蛇。あらゆる崩壊を飲み込み、邪神王の身を砕くことのできる。同質にして異質なるものが。
By Dark Colossal Serpent, are you perhaps referring to the Thane in my essay drawing by any chance?
現実なの。グラジオールも理想度も。かまいたちがその証よ。実在しない現象は後世に言葉として残ることはないわ。知っている？語源を。かまえたち。それは理想度を意味しているの。信じて、匠。 グラジオールを倒すのよ。一緒に。
Gladio. I remembered that name. This feels really important, what she's telling me. I'm worried that I will miss something if I choose either option. So you know what? I think I will just skip selecting something this time. I'd seen that term back when I first been researching D-swords. It seemed that D-sword was a term used in literature, and pseudepigrapha? There's a new word I've never heard before. And pseudepigrapha relating to the legend of Gladio, or more specifically, a sword in it. I wasn't really sure, though. As I continued to think, Misumi-kun quietly got up and started to walk toward me. He went to go right past me, but just before he did, he put his hand on my shoulder.
俺もうついていけねえや。あとは任せた。
I don't mind Shinobu's. So by all means, vacate the premises. More for me! With a sigh of exasperation, he left the hospital room. Leaving me alone like this wasn't fair. Hiyase hadn't shown even a hint of interest in Misumi-kun leaving. It was almost like she was pretending he had never been there in the first place. She was always like this. Always so detached from everything. It felt like I was looking at someone fundamentally different from normal people.
君が生み出したんでしょ。あの時の花壇。それで悟ったの。君はすでに目覚めていると。
僕はギガロマニアックスじゃないよ。
ギガロ何？
ギガロマニアックスでしょ。青いセナから聞いた。
青いセナ。そう、彼女に一度だけ会ったことがあるわ。グラジオールの黒騎士よ、彼女。
Not surprised about that either. Black Knights of Gladio and Gigalomaniacs. Did they mean the same thing? Well, according to what Fest is saying, I guess so.
とにかく僕は違うんだ。リソードだって結局手に入れられなかった。
神罰を乗り越えて、そうすれば剣は召喚される。
Oh no, is being harassed by a Darth Spire loving fanboy really divine punishment?
神罰。
苦しみ、心的負荷の爆発、心の扉の向こう側、あるいは精神的拷問。言い方はいろいろ。
僕これまでにもたくさん苦しんできたよ。
Even now, I was still suffering. I was the laughingstock of Japan. The police thought I was a murderer. Shogun and Yua were terrorizing me left and right. And everything was Nanami.
私は精神病院にいたわ。子供の頃の話。
うん。
I already knew. I'd seen it online. But why was she suddenly bringing it up?
そこには5年弱いた。
Jesus Christ, you were there for 5 years?
私の心はとても弱くて、だから攻撃した。周囲にあるものすべてを、同時に自分のことも。
Miyase's voice was a faint murmur. The girl that sat in front of me wearing pastel pajamas and tracing the creases on the sheets with her fingertip showed no signs of the strength she once had at the concert. The Iyase, the Fess from back then, had she even been real?
私はよく窓ガラスを割っていたの。問題児ね。
Well, if I was stuck in an institution like what I just briefly saw in the last episode, I'd be a problem child too. So, you're not going to get any criticism from me on that, I can promise you that. A faint smile formed on her lips.
割れたガラスの破片、そこにいつもぼんやりと見えていた。
何が？
剣が。でも何年もそれが何なのかわからなかった。ようやくそれがディソードだと知ったのは施設に入って4年ほど経った頃。それまで私は好き放題やっていたけど、ある日施設の職員が一斉に入れ替わって。
All at once?
私は何ヶ月もいろいろな拷問をされて、心が壊れてしまう間際に大いなる意志の声が聞こえて、やっと召喚できたの。
拷問って？
それが神罰だった。邪神を打ち破る力を手に入れるには純粋なる邪神が必要。
I don't know. I think being made a fool of in front of Ophrund is anything but a purifying experience. So basically, she was telling me I needed to suffer more? Otherwise I wouldn't ever get a sword? Well, it will at least definitely add some contextual context to all the crazy stuff that we've been experiencing up until now. We are indeed being deliberately tortured, most likely because, well, as we saw in our encounter of Darth Spider, they want us to awaken and acquire our D-swords. And clearly, we're far from the only people this has happened to. I'd say we've seen signs of it with Kozupi, signs of it with Iyase. I would not be surprised if the same was also true of Sena too. And I bet all this, in turn, is tied to the Project Noah plan that Narosei's got cooking in the back burner somewhere. It all seems to tie back to that. If that was the case, then fuck that. I didn't want to experience any more pain. I'd already been broken down over and over again. I just wanted to be left alone. Well, unfortunately, I think everything that we've seen up till now has made it abundantly clear that there are plenty of people in this lovely little town of ours that are utterly hell-bent on not leaving us alone. So I say we just find a means to take care of the problem ourselves. Permanently. At my wits' end, I felt the urge to scream and shout. But Iyase's voice didn't allow me to.
すべてはお告げよ。すでに渋谷に集っているはずなの。7人の口説き師は。
7 total. So, Takumi, you, Iyase, Sena, Kozupi. That's 4 people. And since Darth Spider seems to have been fully aware of our manifestation of the flower bed to save your life, Ayase, maybe I could possibly count him as a Gigolomaniac too. And there's also number 6, whoever Nerose was speaking to. And then I suppose there is Shogun. Well, wait, no, Rimi. I almost forgot Rimi. Takumi, Ayase, Sena, Kozupi, Rimi, Shogun, and the new gen killer. Unless Shogun doesn't count for some reason, then we at least have 6. Still not sure who our last possible member is, for sure.
あとは全員が覚醒するだけ。急がないと世界は滅びるわ。グラジオールの手によって。
With both our shoulders drooping toward the ground, Misumi-kun and I descended to the first floor of the hospital ward.
俺、もう岸本のことはどうでもよくなった。
Like I said, more chunibu for me.
これまでの俺のポリシーはな、タク。可愛ければ何でも許してやるだった。けどそりゃ間違ってたよ。あんな強烈なテンパ、俺には受け止めらんねえよ。素直に梢ちゃんだけ狙うことにするぜ。
Good luck, my friend. Good luck. You're gonna need it. Not exactly sure if that made things any better. I mean, Misumi-kun had an actual girlfriend he was dating, and clearly he doesn't care.
お前、マジですごいな。岸本のあの脳みそお花畑の話、よく30分近くも聞いてられるよ。俺尊敬したぜ。俺は3分も持たなかった。この俺がだぞ。
Because you're a pretty superficial guy in a lot of respects. No offense. So, I mean, I can only expect a superficial level of attention from someone like you when it comes to serious matters. Don't ask me. Barely listening to Misumi-kun, I focused on my surroundings as I walked. And then, I found a dazed girl standing in front of the outpatient lobby. Rimi. Well, look who it is. From a side view, I couldn't even see a trace of her usual energy. She seemed deep in thought as she gazed up at the lingering sunset, her hair fluttering in the chilly breeze.
Oi! Rimi!
Rimi quickly turned after Misumi-kun spoke, her face brimming with surprise. Then gave us a big wave.
やっと見つかった。
The sight of her smile filled me with relief. I instinctively ran up to her. Of course, I couldn't exactly bring myself to hug her or anything like that, so that was as far as it went.
タク、感動の再会だね。また会えて嬉しい。
どこほっつき歩いてたんだ？
病室、どこかわからなくて、あちこちさまよっちゃった。ひどいよ。置いてくなんて。
I'm sorry, but I don't believe you, Rimi. Rimi made a show of pretending to cry.
お前が先に行けって言ったんだろ。
そうだったね。で、岸本さんには会えた？
As I nodded, I noticed Misumi-kun was grinning very obviously beside me.
お前岸本にビンタされてただろ。
And you had to go and blab your mouth about seeing that. Wasn't it you who suggested that we keep our mouths shut about it?
さて何のことでしょう。
Rimi must have wanted to hide the fact that Ayase had slapped her. That was why I'd been avoiding the topic and leaving it at that. Read the damn room, Misumi-kun. Or maybe that was just something that Takumi thought to himself to do. Can't believe I've already forgot that little detail. Whether it was one thing or the other. It just happened like 15 minutes ago.
隠そうったって無駄だぜ。俺は一部始終を見てたんだ。某家政婦のようにな。
なんだバレてたのか。
Her face now pointing down at the floor, Rimi gave an awkward sigh. Then gazed up at me. Oh, I can't wait to hear what lie is about to come out of your mouth.
もしかしてタクも見てたの。
そうだ。俺とタクで決定的瞬間をバッチリ見てた。
Dude, you don't just say that. Well, he just did.
なんだそれじゃあ必死にごまかそうとしてたのがバカみたいじゃない。
I think I'm gonna go red.
屋上に行ったらちょうど岸本さんがいたからつい気になってたことを質問しちゃったの。そしたら機嫌損ねたみたい。
What has she asked?
なんだよ。気になってたことって。
God damn it. I'm back at the situation I was 10 minutes ago, where I'm worried that regardless of which choice I make here, if I choose something, I'm gonna miss out on something. Fuck, might as well just commit.
ね
Might as well commit. Oh, hell.
あなたはもうずっとこの病院に入院してたんでしょって。
どういう意味だそれ。
あのね岸本さんは退院なんてしてなかったの。
With a bit of pride in her voice, Rimi began to reveal some pretty shocking information about Ayase.
たまにしか学校に来なかったのもこの病院から無断で通ってたから。ライブだってそう。そしてニュージェネ事件は岸本さんが生み出した妄想を彼女自身の手で実行したものだったの。ファンタズムの歌詞の通りに事件を起こしたのよ。それによって注目を浴びるために。それが私の推理したニュージェネ事件の真相。さっき思い切って岸本さん本人にぶつけてみたんだ。そしたら叩かれちゃった。
That wasn't something to ta-ha-ha over. Anyone would get upset being treated as a murderer without proof. Then again, when I treated Rimi like a murderer, she hadn't gotten all pissy.
でも私の推理は間違ってないはず。たく気をつけてね。岸本さんは異常だよ。
Well, she's not normal, but neither are you. Bot calling the kettle black. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And it come from Rimi of all people. I wondered if I'd misheard her. Yes, you are.
私は正常よ。
A clear voice echoed throughout the room. Oh, it's still going. I thought we were done. You say you're normal, and then you come in here with your real Buddha D sword. Yeah, okay, sure. When I looked over to find the source of it, I saw Ayase standing at the entrance to the hospital ward. D sword in hand.
すべては大いなる意志の導き。
With that shriek, she charged at us with her D sword.
おい、逃げようぜ。
タク、どうしよう。
どうしようって。
グラジオールに栄光あ
The Yase had clearly gone off the rails. She came closer and closer. This was bad. We had to run. If we didn't, we were dead. I was in too much of a hurry, so I ended up tripping over myself. Talking me, you dunce. I fell to the floor so hard, it was almost comical.
諦めろ、リミ。
Some friend you were, Misumi. Abandoning me, Rimi and Misumi-kun ran away. You too, Rimi! My arm reached for them as their backs got smaller and smaller. Dear God, how long of a trek is she making towards us?
待って、置いていかないで。
死ね
And when I turned around, I saw Ayase's figure mid-swing, as she brought her D-sword down on top of me.
おーい、タク。何ぼーっとしてんだ。行くぞ。
Wait a minute, how did I get it here? I thought I was in the lobby. Misumi-kun was calling for me. Rimi also waved at me from beside him. Blinking dazedly, I examined my surroundings. Ayase was nowhere in sight. I wasn't injured. I hadn't been split in two.
もうそうか。
And here I thought I was gonna die. That scary version of Ayase could happily stay in my delusions, thank you very much. I don't know, I didn't find her that scary.
タク、早く来いって。
I found her strangely cute, if anything. You don't normally see her that energetic. I hurriedly chased after the two. The three of us walking shoulder to shoulder, we made our way through the outpatient lobby. The outpatient reception was already closed, meaning very few people were still there. However, the large TV screen at the end of the lobby was still surrounded by 10 or so people.
何かな。
また新しいニュージェネでも起きたんじゃね？
You read my mind. Get out of my mind. My body stiffened at what Misumi-kun had so casually said. But immediately after that, Rimi nonchalantly grasped my hand. Thanks to the warmth of her hand, my fear stopped there. The tension in my mind felt like it was melting away. Rimi was my sole support. Rimi gave me peace of mind. Rimi would stay by my side. Until she wants to kill us. It might be a little too optimistic, but I felt that as long as Rimi stayed by my side, I could barely, just barely, endure any fear that might come my way. Thank God. Rimi was there for me.
なあ、二人とも来てみろよ。
This is gonna shape up to be one of the biggest betrayals in anime ever, I swear. Misumi-kun had already made it to the TV, and was urging me and Rimi over to it. All the other people there, patients both young and old, and even some nurses, had gathered around the TV. Their eyes were glued to the screen. What the hell was going on?
行ってみよう。
The two of us moved to a place where we could see the TV, with me guided along by Rimi's hand. I then terminally turned my eyes to the screen, and when I looked at the captions on the screen, I was completely dumbfounded. What? It was a news report announcing the arrest of the new gen culprit.
繰り返しお伝えします。今日午後3時半ごろ、警視庁渋谷署は いわゆるニュージェネレーションの狂気と呼ばれる渋谷で発生した一連の殺人事件のうち、
I see my suspect is right in there in the picture.
9月29日に起きた通称貼り付け殺人事件の容疑者を逮捕しました。殺人容疑で逮捕されたのは無職狛枝慎吾容疑者25歳です。容疑については先ほど渋谷署で行われた記者会見の通り、今のところ太田久さん殺害についてのみで、他の事件に関する容疑は今後追及していく構えです。狛枝容疑者は太田さん殺害については容疑を認めており、交際している女性が太田さんにしつこくつけ回され、カッとなって首を絞めた。しかしゾンビだったため死なず、貼り付けにして動きを止めたなどと意味不明の供述をしています。警察の調べでは狛枝容疑者には現在交際している女性がいないことが明らかになっており、薬物を摂取していた疑いもあるとみて捜査を進めています。
I was in a state of sheer disbelief. The TV screen was repeatedly broadcasting and recording the suspect being transported by car. Flashes coming from the mass media surrounding the car made the screen flicker violently. I find it interesting that the suspect that they arrest claims to have been the one responsible for the crucifixion murder in particular. Once again, it's that particular murder that seems to be singled out compared to all the other ones. Anyway, there was a tip that flashed on screen, wasn't there? Zombie. A person that has been resurrected from the dead. They have lost all sense of their original self. It can only move at a slow pace. But in spite of this, they are still ferocious and often attack people. One theory states that zombies originate from a practice seen in voodooism. A practice in which a wrongdoer is placed in a near-death state using a tetrodotoxin-based powder known as zombie powder. These victims are then accidentally buried alive, suffering permanent brain damage due to the lack of oxygen. Well, I know that the term zombie had some of its origins in voodooism, but everything else is new information to me. The suspect was completely covered by his jacket, so I couldn't see his face.
タク、
Remy whispered me as I stared at the TV screen. Her hand squeezed my own.
やっぱりタクは犯人なんかじゃなかったし、将軍っていう人も単なるいたずらだったんだよ。楠木さんだって間違った推理をしてただけ。ね、これで何もかも解決。
No, it hasn't.
もう見えない影なんかに怯えることないんだよ。
She was right. Since the culprit behind the crucifixion had been arrested, that automatically meant it couldn't have been me. I hadn't been sleepwalking, nor did I have multiple personalities. This proved that I was completely normal. Normal. And at the same time, it also disproved that I'd seen Remy covered in blood at the scene. Oh, I'm still certain that actually happened. It wasn't real. It had to be a delusion I'd come up with. It was over. The nightmare that had been tormenting me without end for almost a month was finally over. Being afraid of shadows. Being afraid of God's gaze. Trying desperately to get a D-sword. None of those things were necessary anymore. But even so, why? Why was there this feeling of unease deep within my chest? Shogun being a prank, and the person behind it was just stalking me for shits and giggles. It just didn't feel realistic. But maybe I was only thinking like that because I'd pretty much forgotten all normal logic and reasoning over the last month. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was on vibrate, but phones still weren't allowed in the hospital. I let go of Rimi, exited through the front entrance, then pulled out my phone. Is it my best friend Shogun? Nanami?
はい。
It's a female voice, so definitely not Shogun.
誰？
Why don't you look at the caller ID and find out? I braced myself. You May Pass might have started playing again. I quickly went to check the name of the caller. There you go. Well, it's a restricted number this time. Interesting. But it was a restricted number. I was hit with a really bad feeling. But when I frantically went to hang up... Nanami? The horribly pained voice that come through the phone was unmistakably Nanami's.
ナミ。
何なの？右手を返して。
What the hell was that? Unless the hand that we saw on Nanami's wrist was transplanted from someone else, that just begs the question, okay, who exactly stitched up the new hand on her? And there's a whole bunch of other questions relating to that are now flooding my mind, but I don't really have the time to go through every single one of them. So we're just gonna keep going. The shop specializing in Jero Froggy merchandise was known as Top Frog. Don't buy them! It's a trap! That pun was likely an attempt to leave a good impression on its customer base. But Bond could only sigh at what he felt like was akin to a dad joke. Oh, it's just Bond. He's fine buying it. I'm sure he can handle the trap just fine. At present, Top Frog had about 20 branches established around the capital region, and it was showing no signs of slowing down in its expansion. Bond was currently visiting the very first branch, situated in Harajuku, a place often cited as paradise by the biggest Jero Froggy fans. Bond, however, quickly came to regret this decision.
なあ、ゆあちゃん。帰っていいか?
Oh, you're here with Yua. He spoke in a low voice to Yua, the girl that had guided him to the shop.
でも、百瀬さんからゲロカエルンを買ってくるように頼まれてるんじゃ。
だってよ、おじさんだけ明らかに向いてるからさ。
Scores of young people happily trod along Takeshita Dori, but the vast majority passed by without even so much as glancing at the shop. Check out the new arrivals! I like how some of the frogs have their eyes bulging out, while the rest are sunk into their skulls. Only a few people were standing inside the actual store. In fact, aside from Bond and Yua, there were only 3 customers in total, all of which were high school girls. Due to Bond's unkempt appearance, walking along Takeshita Dori with Yua inevitably served to portray him as a man of obscene intentions. Well, pretty yourself up, man! Go wash your face, shampoo your hair, shave, put on a suit. He was just going to buy one of the plushies that was so popular nowadays. But that was what any stereotypical old pervert would say. A notion that brought down Bond's spirits considerably. On top of that,
なんか誰かに見られてるような気がするんだよな。いい年して自意識過剰かもしんねえが。
それ私もです。最近誰かの視線を感じて、たまにすごく怖くなるんですよ。
I wonder if it's God's gaze by any chance.
なんで俺だけじゃなかったか。ユアちゃんの場合は心配だな。ストーカーに付け狙われてたりしたら。
そんな怖いこと言わないでください。
安心しな。そんな奴がいたら俺が逮捕してやるから。
Resolving the topic with a grin, Bond stared fixedly at the various frog characters lined up along the shelves.
ところでユアちゃんはここに来るのは何度目だ。
私も初めてです。
あんまり客がいねえようだが。静かなブームってやつなのか。
金曜日から日曜日にかけてはすごく混んでるらしいです。
The weekends yet again.
つまり新作が発売されて週末の間だけですね。特に金曜日はものすごく並ぶらしくて、学生のために18時に販売開始なんですけど、噂だとその行列だけで竹下通りが埋め尽くされるとか。
週末だけねえ。ますます怪しいな。
That it is, my friend, that it is. Bond went to pick up two of the Teary Girofroggies that released last week, then head to the register. Yua, not buying anything herself, followed behind him.
射精
The store employee was a vacuous-looking man in his 20s. His hair had been dyed green, and he had earrings in. If he were not behind the register, he certainly would not look like a clerk to the passing observer. At the very least, it was no outfit to be serving customers in. The employee stared at the two without relent, nor restraint.
娘さんへのプレゼントってやつっすか。
そうなんだよね。この子がどうしてもって言うから。まあ、たまには父親らしいことしてやらんとね。
Bond forced a smile as he looked ingratiatingly at the younger shop clerk. Yua's gaze fell to the floor as her face turned into one of shock. Nonetheless, she did not break the father and daughter charade.
それより、このカエルに興味あるんだけど、ちょっと話聞かせてもらっていいかな。ゲコカエルンってそんなに人気あるの？
Not gonna lie, a gecko frog sounds actually pretty cool.
っていうかゲロカエルんすよ。バンバン人気あってやばいっす。
ゲプカエルンね。いつも週末に新作が出るんでしょ。
Are you misnaming them on purpose?
ゲロカエルんだって言ってんじゃんマジ。っていうか新作とかそういう言い方マジやめてよ。新ガエルだから。金土日と超並んでバンバン売れるんでマジやばいっすよ。マジでバンバン売れるっすから。バンバンっすよマジで。
Yua's brow narrowed in response to the young man. Bonkers seemed to be a fair word of the shop clerk, and something felt odd to her about it. Why is he emphasizing part of it so much? She wondered. It was not intentional, but it almost felt like as if the young clerk was saying Bond's name in some capacity.
これメイドインチャイナってラベルに書いてあるだけなんだけど、メーカーとかわかる？
So the CCP is also involved in Nerose's Project Noah 2 plan, huh?
はメーカーつうかゲロカエルにブランドとかねえし。 ゲロガエルンはゲロガエルンじゃね？それで完結してね。おっさん待ち受けんだけど。教えとくと、ゲロガエルンって作ってんじゃねえから。マジバンバン生まれてっから。
Okay, so where's Mama Jero then? Can I come see her? Unsurprisingly, the conversation was getting to be too much for Bon, leaving him on the verge of rupture. That's fine. I could take over. I'm used to conversing. I'm used to conversing with all manner of stupid stuff. In order to prevent this, he swiftly ended the conversation, handed over the money, then left the store of Yua in tow. But I wanted to keep speaking stupid.
店員の教育がなってねえな。今時の若い連中ときたらもうろくに会話もできやしねえ。大体なんだあの格好は。
You sound so offended by it.
そうですね。あ。
Yua came to an abrupt halt. She grabbed Bon's suit cuff and pulled him to a stop as well.
見てください、バンさん。
どうした？
Yua was pointing in the direction of a white 2-ton truck. It was pulled over on the side of the road, and a number of cardboard boxes were being unloaded from the cargo bed. More froggies? The boxes were carried one after the other into the back of the Jero Froggy shop.
明日発売になるゲジカエルの新作か。
ゲロカエルンです。
ゆあちゃん、よく見つけたな。偉いぞ。
いえ、そんな。
Usually the cargo bed of a truck would have a company name or logo emblazoned on it somewhere, but the one before Bon and Yua was completely blank. Suspicious! However, the cardboard boxes being carried inside had something resembling a company name written beside a few Jero Froggy illustrations.
有限会社振興。聞いたことあるかい？
ありません。
となれば困った時のももちゃん頼みだな。
Probably a subsidiary of Nozomi, if I had to guess. Or shell company, rather. We parted ways with Misumi-kun at the station, then headed straight back to my base. The whole way there, it felt like I was stumbling my way through a nightmare. I wonder if Kozupi and Seina are still hanging around. Nanami's face kept popping into my mind, and each time it did, her expression was different. Nanami had always been the type to wear her heart on her sleeve. When she was angry, she'd puff out her cheeks and pout, and when she was happy, she'd smile so wide, it'd make even me embarrassed. Memories of all those different expressions made my heart thump again and again, almost painfully so. That phone call from before, the things she said. What the hell had they meant? They meant that she needed a hand. Her hand. Her right hand. They could only mean that the bandage wrapped around her arm when I'd seen her at school. Must have been. Where could she be now? At school? Or maybe she'd already gone back home. Who's to say that actually was Nanami we heard?
たく、ほら、前見て歩かないと転んじゃうよ。
I mean, I remember some of the stuff we ended up researching a while back here, talking about how it was possible. Well, I think it was Seina. One of our conversations with Seina. I forget where exactly we heard it, but somebody or something suggested the possibility that it was possible to basically send synthetic voices over phone lines in order to impersonate other people. And I know that's a gross oversimplification of what was actually said, and again, I wish I could remember where exactly it was, but For all we know, that could just be a phony voice of Nanami we just heard, and someone is just trying to torture us right now, is what I'm ultimately trying to say. Supported by Rimi, the two of us came out on the roof. Another one, huh?
どうしたの？
これから実家に帰ってみようと思うんだ。
Oh, really? I'm gonna go with green.
これから？急だね。
歩いても30分もかからないところなんだ。それで一緒についてきてほしい。
As I made that request, I was so nervous. My heart felt like it would burst out of my chest. I was even somewhat surprised that those words had managed to come out of my mouth at all. Asking someone for something. It was something I'd never been able to do before now. And I bet your fun little mind is... And I bet your fun little mind is somehow gonna twist this into something pervy, right?
ねえ、私のことをご家族に紹介してくれる？
Greetings, mother and father unit. Say hello to my spouse. I say spouse because we already traveled to Las Vegas to get married practically overnight, and then flew all the way back here in Japan, and did the nasty all the way until the sun rose. You might actually be grandparents soon, come to think of it. Rimi peered at my face with a somewhat mischievous look.
タクのお家にお邪魔することになれば、顔を合わせることになるでしょ？タクはどうするつもりなのかなって思って。
Fake Rimi actually raises a fair question, Takumi.
ね、どう？
Wasn't that an event that only came after you started dating? Rimi and I weren't a couple. At least for now, anyway. For now! Hang on, what did I just said? For now? Yep, you said for now. Was I seriously thinking we had a chance at ending up together? Yes, Rimi was really nice to me, but at the end of the day, I was an otaku freak. There was no getting away from that. No chance in hell it was ever happening. No point even hoping for it to. Quit being such a conceited loser, Takumi.
タク、教えてってば。
How was I supposed to answer that? Telling Rimi that I'd introduce her would be expecting way too much. But saying I wouldn't introduce her would probably hurt her.
ああ、もう、ちれったいな。こうなったら、はっきり言わせてもらっちゃおうかな。紹介して。
Yes, ma'am.
はい。
Caught off guard by her, I nodded in spite of myself. But Rimi seemed perfectly satisfied with my answer.
計算通り。
A familiar voice reached my ears. Hello there, fake Nanami. How you doing this fine evening? Is your hand hurting by any chance? Surprised, I turned to where the voice had come from, only to find Nanami hiding in the shadow of the container house, smiling.
Nanami!
Why was Nanami here? And that happy smile on her face. It was worlds away from what she'd been like over the phone. Almost like she was a completely different person. Maybe that's because she is. Bewildered, my mind went completely blank. And yet, despite my confusion, Nanami trotted over to me with a spring in her step.
イエーイ
Yay!
イエーイ
Yay! And gave Rimi a high five. Huh? But why? She was acting almost like they knew each other. I never heard anything about the two of them being friends.
鬼びっくりした？実は全部ナナとリミさんの作戦だったんだよ。
作戦？
Does that include the new gen murders too, by any chance? Were you just killing people in all kinds of brutal ways just to ensure that I hook up with Remy? That's one hell of a hookup strategy. Not gonna lie, I think Cupid would be amazed by it.
そう、名付けてお兄とリミさんの仲を既成事実にしちゃおう作戦。
Could you pick a shorter name?
お兄があんまりにも奥手で全然リミさんの気持ちに気づこうとしないからナナが協力したの。
He's as dense as a bag of bricks held together by dried up macaroni and cheese. You're kidding.
じゃあお前手首の包帯とかさっきの電話とかは？
全部作戦のうち。お兄ったら本気でナナの心配してるからちょっと笑いそうになっちゃった。
Nanami laughed without even a hint of guilt. My anger flared. This fucking bitch!
ごめんね、タク。騙すようなことしちゃって。リミさんは謝らなくてもいいの？お兄が超鈍感なのが悪いんだから。
Don't you mean such a brickhead? I fell to my knees, crestfallen. I was filled with anger and frustration. And mac and cheese, don't forget that. Anger at being deceived. Anger at being treated like an idiot for actually worrying about Nanami. I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand how Nanami had decided to do things. But, rising above all that anger, came a certain feeling. One about all my worries being unfounded. One about Nanami being safe. Not only safe, but more lively than ever. My feelings of ease and relief towards those things were far stronger than any anger I could have had, and the suffocating threads of tension coiled around my body were cut away in an instant. Aww.
タク、大丈夫？お兄、落ち込んでないで。ほら、立って。これからお父さんとお母さんにリミさんを紹介しに行かなくちゃいけないんだから。3人で一緒に帰ろう。
I couldn't believe how much of a brat my sister was. Making a fool out of me. Her own brother, time and time again. Well, to be in fake Anonymi's defense, she doesn't really need to do much of anything to make you a fool out of you. You're more than capable of doing that yourself. Although sulking somewhat, I reluctantly rose to my feet. Remy and Nanami both smiled joyfully, and then grabbed one of my hands each. Pulled along by them, I set off. I had a hunch that things would get pretty fun from now on. Oh, if only. Like a peaceful, bright future was ahead of me. I was about to say, how long is this going to go on for? I don't like that noise. Suddenly, a high-pitched sound pierced my ears. One that sounded almost like a woman's scream. It brought me back to my senses and forced me to realize that Nanami's showing up. Her strategy. They were all just a convenient delusion for me. Is that you, Sena? A strong gust of wind swept over the rooftop. The air trembled. My vision was overwhelmed by a blinding sheet of deep crimson. With no idea what had just happened, I turned my face to the light. And when I looked on top of the container house, there she stood. Yep, called it. Aoi Sena, D-sword in hand. The source of the light was her D-sword, glimmering against the sky. but something was strange. When I'd seen it before, Seina's D-sword had emitted a blue glow. The sound vanished. The wind stopped.
答える。
Her voice was sharp, her glare cold. Her eyes glistened with unmistakable animosity.
これを書いたのはお前か？
As she spoke, she thrust out a piece of paper with IR2 scribbled on it. My essay. For some reason, it was all scrunched up. Why did Seina have that? Why was Seina here? Illegal trespassing. Those words popped into my head, immediately followed by the realization that she had searched my room. But what for?
答えろと言っている。
そうだけど、だから。
Next came the sound of Kosubi's inner voice. She was behind Seina. Look at her, feebly grabbing at her leg. She was clinging to Seina's legs, and her face was peeking out from behind them. She had an urgent look on her face as she looked at me. Right as Kosubi screamed, Seina leapt from the roof. She held the sword high and... Rimi yanked my arm, and I fell backward. I quickly looked back up, then I saw the place I had been standing only moments prior. Seina's sword had hollowed out the floor of the rooftop. It had such an insane destructive power, such tremendous sharpness, that it didn't feel real. I think we should follow Kosubi's advice and get the hell out of Dodge, while we still can. The impact had been great enough to destroy the concrete, and yet the sword didn't even have a scratch on it. Weren't these swords supposed to be things people couldn't see, let alone touch? A certain term crossed my mind. Real boot. Her sword had been real booted. Through the mutual recognition of the four people here, Seina's D-sword had gone from her delusion to reality. It was now a great sword that could cut down a person for real. If Rimi hadn't pulled me away in time, I would have been bisected from head to toe by that beautiful sword of hers. It would have been an instant death. Shivers ran down my entire body. Just now, Seina had, unmistakably, tried to kill me. Why? My head was overrun with confusion. The two of us had been eating Crunchy-Kun together just the other day. Kosubi had been there with us. It was true that our relationship wasn't far enough for me to call us friends, and that even back then, Seina had been acting scary the whole time. But even so, she shouldn't have hated me enough to suddenly come after me with a D-sword.
殺してやる。
Seina raised her head. She glared at me even more intensely than before. Her movements were incredibly fast. In spite of the fact that she was holding a gigantic sword, she kicked off the ground like she was starting a 500-meter dash. Run, boy! The tip of her sword scraped against the ground as she brandished it. Closing a distance between us, she raised the weapon above her head. In that instant, my instincts worked out exactly what kind of situation I was in. She was serious. Seina was deathly serious. As I lay face up in a total heap, I let out a shriek. I couldn't run away. None of this made any sense. Getting a game over like this, desperately running away from Shogun, yet getting surprise attacked by Seina as a result of it. It was far too ridiculous. Far too sudden. I didn't want this. I didn't want to die. I really didn't want to die! Right then, a single silhouette leapt above me and landed between me and Sena. When I looked to see who it was, I realized it was Remy. She stretched her arms out wide to debar the way of the approaching girl. Was she putting her life on the line? Just to shield me? Looks that way.
どけ
But if she did that, she was gonna die. I didn't want that.
先畑さんには気をつけて。
Suddenly, what Cosby had said before reappeared in my mind. Pale light leaped past Remy's outstretched arms.
先畑さんはよくわかんないのら。
Remy,
タクに手を出さないで。
unifying the overflowing light, she placed her arms together. The air warped and shook. Coming seemingly from thin air, feathers of shining light burst around Remy and danced in the surrounding air. And then, what appeared in her hands. Effortlessly blocked the fierce downward swing of Sena's gigantic sword.
タクを追い詰めないで。
It was all too graceful to be called a sword. All too imperial. Enough to easily be mistaken for the wings of an angel. Then I realized a certain fact. That she, Sakihata Remy, was a gigolomaniac. What an elegant weapon she has. Overwhelmed with shock, Aoi Sena looked at the face of the girl that stood before her. That winged sword that so effortlessly blocked the attack of her D-sword was clearly a D-sword itself. If the girl she now faced was not accustomed to wielding a D-sword, she would not have been able to block Sena's attack with such perfect timing.
先畑さんもギガロマニアックスだったのら。
Kozue stared down at the three people from atop the container house, as if she was a spectator. Her dangling legs swung back and forth again and again. Sure acting carefree for someone who ruined my surprise attack, thought Sena, clicking her tongue inside her head. However, despite her moving thoughts, she did not remove her gaze from Remy's eyes. Her opponent had a brooding look on her face. Nishijo Takumi moaned from behind Remy, having sunk to the ground in a pathetic display. Sena's target was ultimately him, so she had no intention of fighting with Remy. Besides, this was no manga, nor was it an anime, so a D-sword battle was not a particularly realistic thing to occur.
その男が何をしたか知っているのか IR2 という公式を
知ってるよ。
Sena had been interrupted by a quiet, sorrowful, yet decisive response. Upon hearing that, Sena tightened the grip on her D-sword.
それなら
タクを覚醒させればもっと大変なことになる。
その前に殺す。
あなたには無理だよ。
Sena decided that there was no point in talking further. She brandished her sword in a lie stance. I'm sure I said that wrong. Before her, Rimi stood readily. Nishijo Takumi lay about 5 long strides away from her. At this distance, it would take 3 seconds to resolve things completely. Without hesitation, Sena rushed toward Rimi from the front. Aiming straight for the girl, she swept her D-sword toward her flank. Rimi attempted to block it like before, but Sena's strike had been a feint. Her sword passed through both Rimi's sword and body. She had released the real boot. At present, Sena's D-sword was no more than a delusion. It could touch nothing. It could cut nothing. It could kill nothing. But that had been her very aim. Due to having twisted her body to block the attack, Rimi's reactions would be slowed. Ah, clever. During that time frame, Sena had already slipped past her and made it 2 steps closer to Takumi. She real-booted the sword once again in an instant. This is it. Takumi faced Sena with eyes of fear as she effortlessly real-booted the sword. With her D-sword that had once again become real, she moved to pierce Takumi's heart.
Sena.
Is that the homeless man? A figure flew past the corner of her vision. The instant she heard its voice, the girl, fiercely shaken by it, missed her target. The tip of the sword grazed Takumi's leg and stabbed into the concrete. Sena slowly raised her head, then let out an angry growl. At the edge of the roof, their form lit by the backdrop of the setting sun, stood a single man, like a phantom among the corporeal. His face was pale, deathly so. The pupils that resided within his sunken eyes were surrounded by bloodshot whites. His head hung toward the concrete, his face without expression. The instant Sena saw the man, neither Takumi nor anything else mattered to her anymore. Is this the guy you've been looking for? Hatami, or whatever you called him? The man Sena had chased after without end, her sole object of hatred. The man that had abandoned her and betrayed his family entirely. That very man now stood right before her eyes.
ようやく見つけた。
Sena took a step toward the man, gritting her teeth to hold back her overflowing hatred. She once again brandished her D-sword. Another step forward.
どうしようもなかった。私はお前の母さんを生贄に捧げるしかなかったんだ。
What the hell?
黙れ。
母さんの最後、とても安らかなものだったよ。だからセナ、安心してほしい。母さんのおかげで素晴らしい実験結果が出た。母さんは世界のために役立ったんだ。お前も母さんの功績を誇っていい。
黙れよ!
Blood rushed to Sena's head, rendering her no longer able to see anything other than the man that stood before her. Your father, by any chance? She dashed. He has the same eye and hair color as Sena, so I'm going to bet he's her father. It happened in an instant. She flew at the man's breast, closed the distance between herself and it, then sunk her D-sword deep into its center. That was Sena's long-held desire. She had roamed Shibuya daily for the sole purpose of killing this man. She had dreamt of the day she would kill him countless times. It had never left her mind. She went to remove her sword, which would grant her the opportunity to move away from the man. But before her sword could come free, the man wrapped his arms around Sena and gently embraced her. Her entire body stood on end. Him doing this now, after everything that had happened, only served to nauseate her. Long ago, in the distant past, the bond of family between Sena and the man had been severed. Even so, for some reason she was unable to comprehend. Sena could not bring herself to throw off the man, an inability that deeply surprised her. His warmth, his large chest, the deeply real presence of her father. Her hands dyed in red. When she heard that whisper, Sena immediately understood. Errors slipped into dead spots. Psychological attacks. Enchantment. Seeing someone's illusions. When Sena realized her mistake, it was already too late. She lost her balance, and, together with the man, her body was cast off the roof. To Sena, the ground that lay 8 stories below looked oh so far away. Unable to comprehend what the hell was going on, all I could do was watch as the scene unfolded. Sena had suddenly run to the edge of the roof, lost her balance for no reason I could see, and was about to plunge to the ground right this very second. Hey Takemi, you want to conjure up another flower bed for Sena? Her body was about to disappear beyond the edge. I could only let out a whisper. I tightly closed my eyes. She had committed suicide. Sena had intentionally dove to her death. I didn't understand why. As if I could understand. She'd assaulted me out of nowhere. Serves her right. That girl had just been yet another enemy. No matter how long I waited, the resounding splat of her body hitting concrete did not come. I timidly opened my eyes and tried to see what was going on. Sena wasn't falling. Instead, she was on her knees. Rimi stood right beside her. She was holding Sena's arm. Had Rimi saved her? Sena threw her D-sword away and started crying like a child. What the hell was even going on anymore? From my perspective, it looked like Sena had tried to die of her own volition.
辛い思いさせてごめんね。でもしょうがなかったの。
So you did that. Remy had done something to Sena. The usually bright and happy girl I was used to felt like an entirely different person now. A brooding face, sorrowful whispers, quivering eyes. The girl standing over there wasn't the Remy I knew.
先畑さん。
A voice reverberated in my mind. Kosubi hadn't moved from her position on top of the container house, meaning she was still staring down at us.
もう終了だよね。もしもセナさんのことぐしゃばきってしようとしてるなら、コズピ許さないぽん。先畑さんのことバラバラにしちゃうよ。
A chill ran down my spine. Kosubi was speaking with her usual airheaded anime-esque tone of voice, but the things she was saying were deadly serious.
もう終わり。もともと葵さんのことどうこうするつもりはないし、タクの前から消えてくれるならこのまま解放する。それは無理。
Well, then it looks like we're at a bit of an impasse, aren't we?
だってコズピーとセナちゃんとタクミちゃんはお友達だもん。ね、そうでしょタクミちゃん。
I don't know. I mean, one of my friends just tried to kill me. The jury's kind of out on whether or not we're still friends after that, to put it lightly. The gears in my mind refused to move. If someone told me that everything that just happened was a dream, I'd probably believe them just like that. Come to think of it, why had Sena attacked me so suddenly? Was Sena my enemy after all? Think back. She brought attention to the IR2 formula.
お前のせいだ。
Sena raised her head as she sobbed. She made no attempt to wipe away her tears, and stayed on the ground where she had fallen to her knees. Her gaze was fixed on me.
お前のせいで私の家族は。
I was completely bewildered. She was launching nothing but raw emotion at me. What the hell did she think I'd done? I hadn't done anything. I hadn't screwed with anyone's lives, as far as we know. And I certainly didn't know a damn thing about Sena's family. I was harmless as could be.
無害だと。
She'd read my mind.
お前が生み出したものが世界を滅ぼすかもしれないっていうのに。
Destroy the entire world? More Chuny shit again? I turned my gaze to Remy for help, but she had her back to us. She stared vacantly at the darkening sky.
無駄だよ。
Her figure, her voice, was the sheer loneliness they gave off. Merely my imagination?
タクは何も知らないから。
With that statement, Remy spoke as if she knew everything there was to know.
ふざけるな！今渋谷を襲っている混乱は全部あの公式が発端なんだぞ。
Formula.
それ以上言わないで。タクは本当に何も知らないの。
From the sounds of it, she was talking about me. But I couldn't follow a conversation at all.
公式って俺のこと？
Kosubi leapt down from the container house, holding my essay in her hand. She held out the back of the essay to us. I saw what I doodled on the back in elementary school. IR2. The chaos infesting Shibuya right now had started from this. Talk about an absurd accusation. There was no way in hell some random doodle could affect anything, let alone of that magnitude. I just doodled the thing on a complete whim when I was bored or something. Probably. It was a long time ago, so I didn't remember it all that well. But I did know there was no real meaning behind it. I just copied down the numbers I'd seen in a dream. It was a dream related to whose eyes are those eyes, which I'd written about on the front. I'd used those words all the time since even before I'd written it, and whenever I had, it would all take shape in my dreams and more. Within one of those dreams were those numbers.
FUN の10乗かける INT の40乗イコール IR2。
After a while, Sena wiped the tears from her eyes. Now they were a deep scarlet. While still on the ground, while still hanging her head in regret, she formed a sentence.
この公式をお前が生み出した瞬間、世界は分岐したんだ。
ノア2に搭載されている中で最も秀でているのは中核システムに組み込まれたとある方程式です。
And I take it that formula is the one we were just looking at, right? You know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and end things here for now. I'm pretty damn sure I'm not going to forget most of everything that happened and most everything that happened in this episode come next week. No chance in hell of that, especially if all the stuff that just happened. So, I'm pretty sure Bill Nye here is going to explain to us just what exactly this formula is before long. Or at least partially. I doubt we'll get the full scope of this thing right off the bat, but we'll at least have probably something to work with. So some kind of framework, so I can at least roughly identify what this damn thing even is. Although, whatever it is, clearly it's, well, as Sam just said, world divergent inducing. I'm sure there was a better way I could have phrased that, but whatever. But yeah, I'm real freaking curious now to see what the hell is going to be in store for us next time. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this latest episode of Chaos Head Noah. If you did and you want to see more content from me, feel free to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you all next time. Take care.